Now, I would like to hand it over to President Calderón, who, during his presidency, established himself and Mexico as a global leader in this department, in fighting climate change. His day-to-day support of this project as well has been absolutely invaluable. So let me hand it over now to President Calderón. Sir.
Thank you, Amanda. Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for being here and for your kind hospitality, especially in these difficult days for you and for the international community you are leading. Thank you to be here. Members of the Global Commissions on the Economy and Climate, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome to the launch event of Better Growth, Better Climate, the new Climate Economy Report. I thank you all for being here in such an important event. I would like to start by expressing my deep gratitude to the leaders of Colombia, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Norway, South Korea, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Their vision and leadership have been crucial to make this independent report possible. Thank you very much for all your support during this process. Let me also thank all my fellow commissioners, in particular Professor Lord Nicholas Stern, the co-chair of the commissions and the leader of the economic team. And of course, thank you, Jeremy Oppenheim, for your incredible commitment, and to all the team whose great effort is reflected in this important report. I believe we assembled a great collection of experts and professionals, and the results show it. Climate change is real and strongly backed by science. The recent IPCC report has shown, with strong scientific evidence, that climate change and global warming are a reality. The report confirms that global warming is highly correlated with the emission of greenhouse gases coming from the human activity. In the last century, land and sea temperatures, as well as the sea level, are all rising. The last 3 decades have been the hottest in history, one after the other, particularly in the northern hemisphere. In brief, IPCC and science has rested its case. Climate change is real, and it's a growing threat to humankind. Right now, tens of thousands of people are suffering from the devastating consequences of a hurricane that hit Los Cabos in my country, Mexico, last night. I don't want to say that this event is a direct consequence of climate change, but at least it's the kind of events we will see more violent and more frequent in the future if we don't act today. So with such clear evidence, the solution should appear obvious. We need to reduce our carbon emissions. But if the evidence is so clear, why haven't we acted? Why have government and business leaders done so little to reduce climate risk? The real problem, in our opinion, is that there is a widespread perception that taking action on climate implies huge economic cost. Therefore, there is a common belief that we have to choose between economic growth or mitigating climate risk. Over the course of this and next year, countries around the world will be working out how much action they can and should take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, at the same time, many countries are also recovering from the worst economic crisis since the 1930s and are rightly focused on achieving sustained prosperity and reducing inequality. The question they face is whether they can simultaneously address both of these challenges. Answering this question was precisely the mandate for the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate. So 1 year ago, we set out with the best and brightest minds to answer it. We conducted one of the most comprehensive economic analyses ever done on this subject. More than 100 institutions worldwide contributed, and now, after a year of hard work, we have reached a clear conclusion. Yes, it is possible to have better growth and better climate. Yes, it is possible to create jobs and reduce poverty, and at the same time, reduce the carbon emissions that threaten our future. Yes, it is possible, but we need to make some fundamental changes and smart choices. We looked for real-world evidence and concluded that major structural and technological changes in the global economy are now making it possible to achieve lower carbon emissions and better economic growth at the same time. And the transition to a low-carbon economy can improve the quality of growth, including the creation of new jobs, cleaner air, and better health. A growing number of businesses, cities, and countries are showing us it is indeed possible. Our report concludes that we must focus on three key systems: energy, cities, and land use. We estimate that these three sectors will require investments of around $90 trillion during the next 15 years. This scale of investment is itself a huge opportunity to change the future. How we choose to invest these resources will determine if we get locked in to a carbon-intensive future or we are able to jump into a low-carbon path. The choice is ours. In other words, if we are going to invest $90 trillion one way or another, let's do it in the right way. Let's invest in low-carbon infrastructure instead of a current carbon-intensive one. First, in terms of energy, our report estimates that from now until 2030, energy demands could grow by a third. This growing demand results from improving living conditions and economic development around the world, which are both much needed. And we are not suggesting that we must decouple economic growth from energy demand. What we are saying is that we must decouple economic growth from carbon emissions. To do this, we must change the way we produce energy and the way we consume it. In terms of energy use, we have found that there are many measures that are not only good for the environment, but also have obvious economic and social benefits. Many of these measures are related to energy efficiency, and they are what we call the no-regret measures. They are the actions that allow us to reduce carbon emissions and saving energy, and at the same time allow us to decrease costs for consumers and producers. We must put in place all these measures that generate economic savings and reduce emissions, but that is not enough. We need to provide energy for more than 1 billion people, the poorest families in the world, that still do not have electricity. And we must do it while at the same time avoiding the current path that is expensive and highly polluting. In that sense, our report coincides broadly with the Clean Energy for All initiative of the United Nations. And beyond that, we also need to take bolder, more difficult steps. Today, we are giving $600 billion in subsidies for fossil fuels, but only $100 billion in support for clean energy every year. So we are paying to pollute. That cannot continue. Our report, Better Growth, Better Climate, also concludes that phasing out the use of coal and replacing it with cleaner sources of energy is crucial to achieve our goals. Second, in terms of our cities, the report estimates that by 2030, 1 billion additional people will live in urban areas. That is equivalent of building one city the size of Washington, D.C., Berlin, or Singapore every single month during the next 15 years. The current model of sprawling cities with low density and more oriented to individual vehicles is no longer viable. We need another model, one that is based on mass transport system and more human proximity. We know that this implies tremendous effort to change public policies, but rapid urbanization also creates opportunities, and several communities and cities in the world are showing us the path. Even in this city, the Big Apple, authorities have been able to promote ordered economic growth and at the same time to reduce carbon emissions. And finally, in terms of land use, our agricultural and forest systems are coming under enormous pressure because of increased incomes, urbanizations, and rapid population growth. By 2030, we will need to feed over 8 billion people and feed them in a better way. We have to make better use of our land by improving agricultural productivity while protecting and restoring natural environments. We need to create and finance a new green revolutions that allow us to satisfy the growing demand for food while avoiding the destruction of natural habitats, especially our rainforests. Previous studies, such as the Stern report, had already concluded that waiting is much more expensive than taking action now, that the cost of inaction is much bigger than the cost of action. And you could ask, what has changed since those reports were published? Well, several things. First, during the past few years, we have seen technological revolution that has changed the economics of a low-carbon transitions and provides huge opportunities for growth. In terms of clean energy, for instance, the cost of solar cells has fallen 90% and now make more economic sense. Second, we now have a series of great examples of successful policies that are working around the world. We can build on this and adapt policies to specific needs. Third, key actors around the world are beginning to take inspiring steps in the right direction. Finally, I believe new generations are much more conscious about this problem and are starting to push decision takers to act right now. The window to take action is closing fast, but at the same time, technological changes, the power of innovation, and increased awareness about the problem are providing us better chances than ever before. We have now more reasons to say this is the time to act. However, game-changing action requires clear decisions and brave public policies by all actors. We can unlock investment and innovation in a low-carbon economy if we provide the clear signals to the market. That requires that governments put the right public policies in place and provide clear market signals as prices to businesses and investors so they choose low-carbon paths and do it quickly. Only these individual choices will translate into the collective action that we need. We must make the right choices. As part of our report, today we are publishing a 10-point global action plan for government and businesses. These 10 practical recommendations can deliver significant economic benefits and at the same time most of the emission reductions that we need to avoid dangerous climate change. I will hand a copy of these 10 recommendations to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and hope leaders will use them to make responsible changes. 1 week from now, global leaders will meet in this city. From there, they will start a journey that will continue in Peru this year and in Paris 2015. We have reached a limit. We have a great responsibility to save our common house. With this report, we now have a set of tools that global leaders can use to foster the growth that we all need while reducing the climate risks that we all face. This is what we mean by better growth. This is what we mean by better climate. This is the new climate economy. And now, if you allow me, Mr. Secretary General, I will hand you a copy of the full report and the Global Action Plan, hoping that it will be useful in the challenging task of building a brighter future for humankind. This means not only avoiding an environmental catastrophe, but it also means taking the opportunity to provide our children and grandchildren sustainable economic prosperity. Thank you very much.